Automatic import of custom code during compilation. This is one of our latest features that's been added to the JCB component, and I'm happy to demonstrate it to you now since all its functionality is in place. Also explain to you some of the limitations that currently still exist, and hope that it will become a very useful tool to all of you out there. Okay, so first, what does it do? Well, it's actually a little mutated from what its original intent was, and it's become two things really. So the first thing is, and this is obviously what was initially intended, is that you would be able to add code to your component once it's been compiled and installed into that same Joomla website, that you'll be able to go into that code and with a few placeholders actually add code that once you compile the component again, JCB would dynamically grab that code, extract it into its database, store it there, and from there on forward continue to add it back into the component every time. Now, the way we've done that is we have not used line numbers as the main way of determining where that code must be added, because of the reality that line numbers always will change. You know, you might have, let's say the custom code that you're adding is at line 105 or something, and if you make a change at line 20, then that means all the code moves down, of course, and now we don't know where to add your code without either writing over or placing it before, and you know, there's all kinds of complications. So the only way we could resolve that is to create what we initially called a fingerprint, but later became a hash reference of the code, a few lines of code above the custom script and a few lines of code below the custom script. Now, it varies from how many lines it uses, and there is a reason for it. I'm not going to bore you with the detail. If you want to see how we do it, there's actually, the code is open source, so you can actually go look at it. So there's a function in the Iget file, which is part of the compiler set of files. So the function's name is search file content, and it's in this function that it really goes through every line of the code that is already on the Joomla website, and then when it finds it, it adds it to an array which eventually gets saved to the database. So this is the lines that actually does the work. Obviously there's lots of things that works with this this function, but this is the center of everything. Obviously I'm very sure there are better ways to do this, and so we will constantly improve this as others make suggestions, and make sure that it remains stable. But to explain why it sometimes uses more or less of the lines above, it should never use more than 8 lines, because basically here it is packing the fingerprint, taking the line content, putting it into an array, and every time it passes, it checks whether that array, you know, if it's greater than 10, we cut it down to 6. Okay, and this continues to happen over and over and over, because we don't want this fingerprint array to become bigger than let's say 10 lines. And at some point when we find a placeholder, we actually take that fingerprint array and we create a hash from it, and then we store that hash into the database. So that means that amount of lines are changing, because it could be, oh, we've just cleared the array and we are at 6 lines, and then we add a 7th and now we find a placeholder and everything happens. Obviously there are 2 ways in which the code is added, okay, and I think I've explained that in the previous tutorial, but I can do that again here quickly. Let's see, where is it? Oh, here we go. In that same file there is a comment way at the top which gives the explanation of the placeholders. Now obviously the placeholders, sorry, where does it go? There we go. These X's here must be asterisks, as it's asterisks, as they like that one. And they get, this is the one with which you would start, either to insert or to replace. There is also a note on GitHub about this which maybe would seem more logical. Let's go there. So here we are at GitHub. It's on issue 37 if you want to go look at it under the Joomla component on GitHub. The component builder on GitHub. So basically to start inserting code you would use this as a placeholder, and then your code obviously on a new line, and then when you finished this would close that code block. But sometimes you don't want to insert code, you want to actually replace code that was generated by JCB, and then you'd use the replace code placeholder, and then again you use this one to end the code block. Now when component builder on compilation discovers these tags, they get converted from insert to inserted and from replaced to replaced, and it adds it back without this diamond in between those dollar signs and the inserted text or replaced text. It removes them, because basically by doing that it means that this code doesn't need to be updated. The moment you add those 2 back in there between those 2 values, then the next time component builder compiles, it actually knows, okay, this piece of code I need to check again and update whatever is in the database because it's been changed. This diamond here tells it there's a change, you need to update. Now you'll see that now there is this new number being added next to the code. That number is actually the ID of the database row, the database row that JCB is actually stored the code in. So if you change this number, you're gonna have a problem. So don't change this number. JCB puts this number in so that he can basically know where to go update the code in the database. So once you've made any changes to the code, you'd simply add this diamond back in. That's quite important, otherwise it will not be parsed and it will be overwritten by what's in the database. So that's really it. That was the initial purpose of this new feature, was to be able to, in the editor, create code and then on the fly have it become part of the JCB infrastructure for your component, and then in the future it will continue adding that code back in without you having to write it or remember it in any way. And if you want to change the code, you just add these diamonds either for the insert or for the replace, depending on what you did, and it will automatically then know there's been a change, and it will first update what is in the database and then store it back into the new compiled version. So that is exciting in itself. I realize it's a real stunning new feature. We have been doing some teething on some of its implementation. You could even read down here, there's some comments and things. We are at the moment at version 2.3.2, which is not yet released. I'm busy working on it. Because this new version 2.3.2 will include the extra feature, which wasn't ever really discussed here on the forum, because it was a feature that I've been hoping for quite some time. You know, I've actually built quite a number of components with JCB by now, and I've always had this issue that I would develop a very smart function, a custom script obviously, inside of some view or some field or somewhere in JCB, and then I would like to use it again elsewhere, but then I have to copy it and go paste it there, and it will happen that I would improve it there. You know, I would add this little thing there, and I'd sort of debug this and improve the whole function, the whole maybe just piece of script or whatever. I just improves it, and then it, where I took it from, I need to now copy again back there, and it's always this copy and move, and then obviously there's variables inside that needs to be different names, and there's always been a very unpleasant experience. And so since I know of object oriented concepts, I've always wondered, is there a way for me to, with JCB, create the same kind of, in a small way of course, but give that same kind of functionality. And so when this new improvement came along, I immediately thought, well, yes, there is actually there is a way for us to make this work for both of these aspects. So what did we do? Well, let me see, where are we? I created the option for you to either use the hash automation, which is the one I've just explained, or to use the JCB manual. Now, JCB manual, if you set up custom code, the JCB manual will do exactly that. It will literally create the option for you to take this placeholder, for example, and I have a field. Let me open it. Okay, sorry about that. We had a few jumps there. I had to open the field. So basically I have a field here with which I upload images. It's a little drag and drop field. It's actually a note, as you can see, but I'm using some HTML in the description, and I've added some JavaScript to this footer of wherever this field is being used. So basically this code is used to upload, or it's part of the process. There's much more code, but this is what I need to reuse quite often. And so I've improved this in many areas, and then I would always have to come back here, and there are certain text that differs from each place. For example, that word teaser needs to be different everywhere else, and the word image, sometimes it must be images and not just image. And so what I've done now is I've actually taken this code I've added it to a custom code, obviously, and I've said this is JCB manual. And now everywhere where I want dynamic script updates, I've added the arc values. If you want to understand more about the arc values, just read this note above here. For basically, to say it simply, these arc areas are like placeholders, and I can pass strings or values via this custom code placeholder, and it gets updated on the fly during compilation everywhere where I use this code snippet elsewhere in JCB. So this gives me a little bit of that object-oriented feeling where I write a function or a piece of script once, and then I can reuse it everywhere else and simply update the values being passed to it. So it's by far not error proof. Obviously you can't use any commas in these values, and you can't use any plus signs in these values. It needs to be one word. It can have a $sign if you want to actually have it place a $sign symbol in the code, but it obviously doesn't execute the string that you pass, so it will literally just paste it in wherever you've placed this arc placeholder. So you can add as many values to this custom code, I mean arc values, as you want, but always make sure that the amount of values that is in the code must correspond to the amount of values that you are passing to it. Otherwise you would end up having a certain area of the code, the arc placeholder will not be replaced with anything. It will stay like that if it doesn't have a value for it. Okay, so now what I'm doing is back into the field. I basically add the placeholder here. Since it is ID 1, obviously it's that one, number 1, and I'm passing 3 values to it: image, and teaser, which will then correspond to the replacing arc values here. So that 0, 1 would be image, this 1 value here would be image, and this one would be teaser. So it will actually replace it on compilation. And now I'm able to reuse this code anywhere else in JCB. So if obviously I've saved this previously, I'm going to just close it now and just open another one. I've got one here called poster, which is basically doing the same thing. And so now I'm also passing image, and then poster. So that means now on this area it will actually change that second arc value, which is actually the third one. It will update it to poster instead. And so I have somehow the ability to now have dynamic code in custom code, which can be reused all over JCB. The only negative thing currently is that this kind of code that actually has dynamic values passed to it will not be updated by any changes you make in the editor outside of JCB. So if you think about the two functions, you'd realize that they do not fully merge at this stage. But let me say this: if you have a snippet of code which has none of these arc, for example, if you only used it like this without any placeholders, like that, without any extra values, now that code will be actually replaced if you make any changes to it in the editor. So it will start behaving like the initial implementation. It will place it back into the component with that inserted tag above it, and if you put the diamond in, like we explained, it will get this inserted tag. Sorry, not that one, this one. So if you have a custom code to which you're not passing any values, then it will add this inserted around it, and you can then in the editor add a diamond in there so it looks like this, and then on compilation it will update that code in JCB and then place it back into the new compiled component. So that still works, and I think it's amazing that it does, but unfortunately the moment you pass any arguments to it, like so, then we know that there are arc placeholders in the script like that. And since this script is now being used at multiple areas with multiple values, now let's say you change one of them, you don't really want it to replace the database script, because how will we know where these arc placeholders should be placed? The code at that stage has no reference whatsoever to these arc values. Now there is an idea busy formulating, which we would ideally move all the arc values up above your script like this. Maybe put some convention of arcs, like that, and then arc, and then equal, and then then change this to value var in this case because it's JavaScript, and that could possibly start resolving the issue. I'm still working on it, which then we would only really not update this area in the database, but update the whole rest. So you would then in that case use value wherever arc0 is to be found, like that. So then we need only take care of this area, and this area can be dynamically updated. I haven't actually find complete satisfaction with this solution. I'm still working on it, but I can guarantee you that it is something I would like to be able to do, is to make a change to it in the editor and it also updates it here in the database. I think that would be excellent. But for now, any code with arcs, as long as this node remains here, I think we said here that if there is any change to these limitations, these nodes will change. So the next time you open it and you see the node is different, you'd be as happy as we are with the advance. And so that is really the other feature that we've now added, basically creating custom code and then reusing it across multiple areas of your component without the whole complexity of needing to update it everywhere again. Obviously you need to know your PHP and whatever language you are targeting with this custom code well enough so that you, by this placeholders and by everything else, that it actually works. If it does not work, that debugging and everything unfortunately is your responsibility. There is another thing that is still functional though, I think I didn't mention it yet, and that's the component placeholder and the view placeholder. If this specific script is going to end up somewhere under a specific view, this one actually doesn't. Oh wait, it does actually, because your field script, this field script, it gets added to the view footer, right? So then you have a view placeholder, which basically is just also 3 brackets view like that and 3 brackets. So that's how you could then do a view dynamic update of any, if you need to use the view string name anywhere in this script. Okay, so that means you have component, obviously with the uppercase and the all uppercase and all that variations, and you have the view, unfortunately only that current view that is being targeted will be added to that placeholder. in lowercase. So that is demonstrating the, well, I haven't demonstrated, I should actually demonstrate it. So we have got these there. I'm just going to not save it because none of the changes here is relevant. And then I will compile this now, and then in the code show you where it's been added. Okay, the component that it's using that at the moment is a registry. Okay, so I'm going to install it now. So let's go look at the code where it should have been added. So in the code we see there the image has been updated with image, teaser has been placed there, image has been placed there, as well as in all the other areas where we had those arc placeholders. They've all been updated and the code itself has been inserted in the correct area. Well, that is custom code in a little different implementation of it. We've called that the JCB manual option. If you want to know more about the hash automation option, then please watch the previous tutorial on YouTube. Thank you for watching.